Today I stand before you not as a political candidate, but as a fellow Utahn, a father, a grandfather, a proud grandson of immigrants. We have just passed the summer solstice, the longest day. As we approach the winter solstice, the days will shorten, the darkness will extend. But at the end of that period, the trend will reverse and the days will brighten. The same cannot be said of our political environment unless we make it happen. Today we are facing a new chapter that is being written, a chapter rife with disagreement and division. We're at an impasse. Our nation is at war with itself, fueled by violence, hatred, and above all, anxiety. Our economy is strong, but only felt by the upper percentage of incomes, a fallout of trickle-down economics and the organized actions of the few. And that's what brings us here today. Legislation passed by the organized actions of the few. Families are concerned about Utah trigger laws that deny personal agency and could force women to travel to other states to obtain life-saving health care and care that can preserve their future reproductive health. Couples cannot plan on building a family if they cannot afford housing. Women are concerned about pregnancy if they cannot access the health care they need for every stage of the journey and potential lifelong health complications. The majority of women do not consent to this. Women's consent is foundational in ethical, legal, and social context. This means that women are informed, volunteer, and are uncoerced to participate in sexual activity, medical procedures, and personal decisions. This foundational argument results from historical offenses against women, rooted in all places in midwifery. I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of this. It goes back 160 years. The practice of midwifery is rooted in all races and ethnicities, as women across the world have helped one another overcome the pain, the terror, the unique childbirthing experiences that no man can relate to. By 1865, as our Civil War ended and slavery passed into the pages of history, a rising interest in obstetricians grew as European men sought to enter the field. Men had no real experience with midwifery, so a political campaign was organized against women for the sole purpose of painting women, specifically midwives, as incompetent. The campaign shifted arguments away from men's ignorance and focused on portraying midwifery as barbaric, antiquated, uneducated, and degrading. It changed how Americans viewed midwifery in favor of male obstetrical care by portraying men as formally educated doctors with advanced healthcare tools and practices needed to usher in a new century of medicine. Well, that wasn't exactly what happened. The dark truth behind this campaign is that the same male doctors were advocating for themselves while conducting experiments on black women. Primarily male-dominated medical field was woefully behind in education of the female body and intricacies and challenges that arise during pregnancies. To better educate themselves, they experimented on women without fear of legal repercussions, lacerating, suturing, and cutting open women without even being anesthetized. And the campaign against women did not end there. Smear campaigns, wrapped in racism and misogyny, were used as political soapboxes to drive legislation to ban both midwifery and abortion, thereby removing women from the field. As these smear campaigns progressed, political and racial motivations continued through separate but equal laws and restrictions on immigration. And why do we talk about immigration? Well, Chinese immigration grew steadily between 1860 and 1880 as immigrants arrived from San Francisco to help construct the Central Pacific Railroad, and Utah was a beneficiary. With ever-growing immigrant population coming in from both east and west, white supremacy reared its ugly head through restrictive immigration laws. The raw truth behind these laws is that the rising immigrant populations threatened European supremacy. men urge women to spread your loins across the nation, a message further solidifying white supremacy under the guise of an anti-abortion messaging, while stifling the rising populations in not only Asian Americans, but in the Black and Indigenous American communities through involuntary sterilization of African American women and Indigenous women. Eugenics was promoted by European men and suffered by women of color without their consent. The consent of women was an afterthought until Roe v. Wade was decided. And my generation thought that this is the end of that chapter in women's history, but we were mistaken. About the same time the Roe decision came into effect, federal legislation was passed enacting environmental and worker safety rules. Big business united against these rules and recruited allies in the evangelical movement, a movement that had not been particularly concerned about abortion in the past. They began a 50-year project to pack the courts with judges who favored both their economic and anti-abortion views. This movement to restrict reproductive freedom has expanded to include other infringements. Look no further than our state legislature. They've passed book banning bills, bathroom bills, legislation intimidating teachers to restrict their ability to teach the negative aspects of American history, like slavery, the Trail of Tears, internment camps, and lynching. And now, Justice Thomas has said the Supreme Court needs to go after contraception and gay marriage. It has been an all-out attack on personal freedom. So we've come to a point in our history where an opportunist has appointed 3 radical justices to further his political ambitions, and many of our local candidates have signed on. In the political primary races, all of the Republican candidates call themselves strongly pro-life. I call it strongly anti-freedom. Representative Curtis, the likely Senate candidate of the Republicans, said to me 2 years ago in a debate that it was his responsibility to make family planning decisions for women. One of my potential opponents has voted for every anti-freedom bill that has passed through the legislature and sponsored several of them. We are at a fork in the road. This election will determine the future of the Supreme Court. We will likely get in the future years 2 young justices that will either change the path of the court or cement it into place for decades. A path in front of us either to freedom or oppression. That's why I'm here today, to remind us there is a silver lining in these clouds. Women and their allies are again fighting to reaffirm personal agency. Women who came before us, women like the suffragette Elizabeth Cady Stanton, who fought for women's right to vote and personal agency. Women who fought for the advancement of women of color, such as Rosa Parks and Coretta Scott King. Women who wrote about women's struggles through the female experience, such as Gloria Steinem and Malala Yousafzai. Women who had defended personal agency, such as Ruth Bader Ginsburg and Sandra Day O'Connor. This is our history to write, but we must fight to protect our rights. We must organize. We must speak up and let our voices be heard. We must vote for candidates who will fight for personal freedom, not candidates who will make backdoor deals only to profit from the suffering and oppression of many. As Sandra Day O'Connor said, as women achieve power, the barriers will fall. As society sees what women can do, as women see what women can do, there will be more women out there doing things, and we will be better off for it. Women need a clear path to freedom and prosperity. Let today be an example of women can do, and we will all be better off for it. Thank you.